Welcome back. Malawi's president, Peter Mutharika, has warned opposition parties that his government will use all necessary force to protect any planned disruptions at the country's airports and border points. Since Mr. Mutharika won a narrow victory in the presidential polls in May, there have been massive demonstrations in the country. Demonstrators are angered by how the Electoral Commission handled the vote, which they allege was full of irregularities. Last week, they had planned to take their protest to airports and border crossings, but a court barred them from doing so. Meanwhile, President Mutharika says he's ready to talk to opposition groups to end the protest, which he said was affecting the country's economy. However, he says while his government supported peaceful demonstrations, the destruction of property and life would not be allowed. The election results are currently being challenged in court by the opposition. 6 bodies have been recovered after a tour group was swept away by a flash flood in a Kenyan national park. Officials say the incident at Hell's Gate National Park involved 5 Kenyan nationals, a local tour guide and a foreigner. 1 tourist is still missing and a search and rescue operation is ongoing. The park, which is about 100 kilometers northwest of the capital Nairobi, has been closed. After the incident, which happened during heavy rains, 2 survivors from the group reportedly alerted park rangers, who sent out a search party and a helicopter. In 2012, 7 people died in a similar flooding at Hell's Gate, which is frequented by hikers and campers. Kenyan journalist Cyprus Mbati joins us now from Nairobi to discuss more on this. Hello, Cyprus. Thank you for joining us. Quite a devastating story. What more can you tell us, especially about the search and rescue operation that's still ongoing for the missing person?
Good evening. What I can tell you from Kenya is that the search for the bodies, or for one body which is still missing, is still on. The rescuers so far recovered 6 bodies out of the 7 which was swept down the gorge, and it's believed that the missing body is covered by rubble downstream. So far, the rescuers are on the ground since morning. They are using a chopper to go around the gorge to see what they can find the body which is missing. There's a somber mood on the ground when all the bodies the 6 which have been recovered were paraded there for identification and further transportation to their destination. So far, the gorge has been closed by the authorities there for safety purposes. That's what we have for now.
Well, we understand the bodies recovered were part of a tour group. What else do we know about the victims at this time?
So out of those who are swept by the water, it's only 1 who is not a Kenyan. The rest, the 6 were Kenyans. They are Indians, or people only but Kenyans who live in Kisumu city. And they had gone to the area as tourists to see how the Hell's Gate Gorge actually is. It's a popular tourist destination, and it attracts thousands of tourists there yearly. So it's not something new that happened yesterday. What we can tell you is that it's devastating because it's happening again and again and again and again. It's a tragedy for now. Thank you. The victims who are new there. There were tourists from Kisumu city, which is about 500 kilometers from Nairobi, 400 kilometers from the site. They had come there for a camp visit. They had a one tour guide, and 5 were Kenyans. 1 was a non-Kenyan, and then plus that tour guide. Now there were 7 in total. As they were within the area, that's when the raging water came from upstream, swept them downstream.
Cyprus, and like you mentioned, this incident is not new to the park. But how are Kenyans reacting to this tragedy?
Kenyans are generally kind of asking themselves, why is it that you're recurring and recurring? Because remember in 2012 we lost almost 12 people who had gone to camp there. They were church youth who were camping in the area. Then the same way they were swept downstream by similar floods. So people are asking themselves, why doesn't Kenya Wildlife Service take measures or steps that they can stop such kind of thing happening again and again? But then the Kenya Wildlife Service is defending itself, saying they have done all they could to ensure that the tourists who visit there are safe, and they usually train the guides who take people there. So it's a matter of waiting and seeing now what next.
Mm. And of course, this incident, it does call to question the safety of the park during the rainy season. What are authorities saying?
The issue is true, actually raises the issue of safety in the park. But when you listen to Kenya Wildlife Services, which is managing the park, they say that they have made all efforts that are required to ensure the safety of people is up to standard. For instance, they are training the trainers, the guides there, to be able to read weather patterns in the area. Remember the floods that go downstream, the Hells Gates, where the incident happened. The water that sweep people down there, which ran down the gorge, do not originate from the area. For instance, yesterday, where the water came from around 50 kilometers away, it rained in a place called Nakuru and Nyahururu. Then out of those are highlands in a way. Then out of the rain which happened around several kilometers away, the floods now were raging downstream up to the gorge where the people are, the tourists were, that's where they were swept downstream. So there's no warning for those people who are within the gorge to know that it has rained or there's water coming. You just find water coming downstream and sweeps down people. So it's an issue of now ensuring that the guides know the patterns of if there's rain which has fallen some parts away, they can be able to detect and tell the people who are within the gorge to leave. It's an issue of not having proper detection measures. It's an issue which the authorities have promised now to ensure is adhered to the end. Thank you so much.
All right, Kenyan journalist Cyprus Mbachi speaking to us there from Nairobi. Now, finally on the program, Pope Francis is expected to make his fourth trip to Africa when he visits Mozambique, Mauritius and Madagascar from the 4th to 10th of September 2019. According to the Vatican, Pope Francis will travel to Mozambique's capital, Maputo, on the 4th, then on to Madagascar on Saturday 7th and Port Louis, Mauritius on Monday 9th of September. Mozambique is recovering from deadly cyclones in March that prompted devastating floods in one of the worst weather-related disasters to hit the region. The Pope's last visit to sub-Saharan Africa was in 2015 when he traveled to Kenya, Uganda and Central African Republic. The trip took place under high security as the head of the Catholic Church traveled to Kenya and Uganda, both recent victims of Islamist militant attacks, and the Central African Republic, a country torn apart by Muslim-Christian strife. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shivwale.